welcome. This is the video brown bag for BPA's plan to implement the General Service Fluorescent Lamp Standard, which was a ruling handed down by the Department of Energy and is part of the EPACT 2007 legislation. So EPACT is a piece of legislation that came down in 2007, and a piece of that legislation is known as the General Service Fluorescent Lamp Ruling. That ruling deals with the efficacy standard requirements for what's known as general service fluorescent lamps. First notice was in 2007, and basically as early as 2009, Bonneville Power and others across the industry have been saying that T12 lamps will no longer be available for retail sales, distribution, or manufacturing as of July 2012. So let's talk about this EPACT General Standard Fluorescent Lamp issue and what it really means. In 2007, it meant something totally different than what it means in 2012. And what I mean by that is that the GSFL standard called out efficacy requirements or lamp efficiency requirements. And in 2007, when those requirements came out, there weren't any T12s that met the basic requirements. That essentially meant that T12 lamps would no longer be allowed to be sold, manufactured here in the United States. However, starting in about 2011, it's become clear that there are loopholes in these laws, and manufacturers will, in fact, continue to produce T12 lamps. So we can be very clear in saying T12 lamps are not going away. So let's take a look and understand exactly what legislation we're talking about. There are two different pieces of legislation currently being enacted right now which both deal with lighting technologies out there. The first one is what people are a little more familiar with. It's ESA, it's the Energy Independence and Security Act. And that legislation deals directly with the standard incandescent A-lamp. What we're talking about today is the Energy Policy Act of 2005, which subsequently gets revised. And specifically, we're talking about one provision or ruling within that legislation, which is known as the General Service Fluorescent Lamp Ruling. That will take effect July 14th, 2012. So here we have it. You can take a quick look at the table that was produced as a result of that General Service Fluorescent Lamp Ruling, and you'll see the most important thing to understand here is that there's an efficacy requirement called out. So this table, you can see two different things here. You can see the types of lamp that are affected under this ruling, and you can see the efficacy requirement then attached to manufacturing those lamps. Let's take a second to talk about why the General Standard Fluorescent Lamp Ruling is difficult to implement. The first reason is because BPA's baseline is designed around fixture wattage, and fixture wattage is lamps times the ballast factor. Without real market data, we don't know what sort of ballasts out there are being installed. We do know that the worst of the worst ballasts, magnetic ballasts, were available through 2010, and those typically have a 20-plus year lifespan. And going to the next slide, we see that taking a quick look at what that fixture wattage baseline looks like, you can see that if you have two 40-watt lamps and a ballast that draws 16 watts, you're going to end up at a 96-watt baseline. So there's an example of how the baseline is currently calculated. To deal with this shifting baseline, BPA has developed what we're calling the Interim Arithmetic Baseline. This is a four-step process, and we're going to walk you through it right here. The first step is to identify lamps affected under the GSFL ruling. You can see we have those listed right here. The second step is to decouple lamp wattage from the ballast. It's important to remember that the GSFL standard is a lamp ruling, not a fixture ruling. You can see how we've done this here. The third step is we take the new GSFL required efficacy and divide it into the existing lamp wattage. This gives us what we're calling the allowable lamp wattage. In the example we have on the board here, we're taking those 40-watt lamps, which had an efficacy of roughly 79, but we're now using the required efficacy under the new standard, and that's 89. You can see when that happens, we get an allowable lamp wattage of 35.4 watts. In the last step, we take the allowable lamp wattage and we add back in the ballast factor. You can see in this example, we went from a baseline of 96 watts down to 86. That's just about a 10% decrease in savings. At this point, BPA expects to see, on average, a negative 10% shift on programmatic savings claimed through T12 bulbs. Depending how much of your portfolio is made up of T12s, this number will vary. Regarding incentives associated with these measures, BPA at this point thinks we'll see roughly a 15 to 25% decrease in incentives offered from T12 to high-performance T8 lamps. Let's take a look at basic timelines so you better understand the dates we're talking about. The most important thing to tell you is that the current BPA lighting calculators, versions 2.2 and 2.3, will be available for utilities to submit projects under until October 1, 2013. That means utilities have until this date, October 1, 2013, to turn in projects under the status quo. BPA believes that in the first quarter of calendar year 2013, we'll release a new lighting calculator, version 3.0. This version will have significant improvements to it and will also incorporate BPA's new baseline for T12 lamps. This essentially means that utilities will be able to choose which calculator they prefer to use until October 1, 2013. After October 1, 2013, versions 2.2 and 2.3 will be retired, and all BPA utilities who use the Bonneville Lighting Calculator will be required to use version 3.0 with the new T12 baseline. In an effort to continue supporting high-performance T8s, Bonneville has updated its Get the Skinny campaign. This marketing campaign is available to utilities and trade allies. It contains direct mail inserts, bill inserts, and email content that can be used by parties to help sell high-performance T8s. Thank you for joining us for this video version of the webinar. In closing, you can see that non-action for BPA was not an option. Being part of the DOE, it was imperative that we took action on this EPACT legislation. BPA worked hard with its customer utilities and all the stakeholders to keep program incentives strong. Feel free to direct your questions and comments to our lighting team at lighting@bpa.gov. Thank you.